Lecture 1, which will cover Chapter 1 Research Theory of your book, Research Methods for the Fashion Industry. What is research? Lots of people are scared of doing research and taking research classes, but we actually do research every day. If you like fashion, you tend to look at what other people are wearing around you every day, which is a form of research to see what others similar to you are wearing. Also, many people go onto Pinterest and use Pinterest to look at new trends and how different outfits are put together. This is also a form of research that you can use to make you better equipped when you go to buy things or to buy fashion. Also, you'll be doing an assignment in Unit 1, which is a mini observation, where you will be actually doing a form of research where you're observing others and compiling research from that and information. Another form of research that we do that's like an interview is when you meet someone new, you tend to ask them questions about themselves to get to know them. So in essence, you're interviewing someone to learn more about them, which is also a form of research. Research explores, investigates, examines, and studies. It interprets facts and it provides answers. A form of exploration would be exploration of outer space and learning more about the different galaxies and planets. You can investigate into a phenomenon. You can examine something. Every time you take an exam, this is a form of research that your professor is using to determine what you've learned from the course and if what they've been teaching has actually taught you something, and that if you've learned the material. You can also study a phenomenon, or you can also find a discovery of something new from basic research. So an example of a discovery would be if you found a cure for cancer. You can also do interpretation of facts. That would be kind of like we mentioned in the introduction about where you could go and you could read through different blogs or look through blogs to see what ads they're posting for different fashion or brands. And you can also find answers by scientific means seen in basic research. Research is a method to seeking answers to questions as a scientific means to solve problems. And this method is a step-by-step process that you follow to make sure you're objective and can repeat your study again. Your study has been done in a certain order and it's come up with a certain conclusion. So you can kind of think of research and the method to your research is kind of like math, and that if you leave one step out of a math problem, then you're going to get it wrong. You can also think of this as a method that you have to follow is like a recipe. So when you're making a recipe, if you leave one thing out or if you add too much of one thing, it's not going to taste right. Trust me, I know. I've added too much salt to cookies and it did not turn out well. Looking at research, you want to be objective because you're going to get results that are different than what you thought you would get, and you don't want to have bias in your research. So some things you want to do to make sure you don't have bias in your research is you don't want to have any leading questions or use any research, like if you do a survey, you don't want to ask any questions that actually lead them toward a certain answer. You want to find out what they think instead of bringing in bias about what you think they should think. You also need to stay on task with your research and keep your research question in mind. So when you're doing your survey, you don't want to have random questions that don't relate back to your research topic and your purpose. So an example of this would be if you're talking about online purchases and you want to learn about consumers' online purchasing behavior, then you wouldn't ask them a bunch of questions about their store purchasing behavior. And one of the last things for objectives of good research is you want to interpret your facts without any bias by being objective. So it's very important to be objective with your research and to summarize your facts without any biases or bringing in preconceived notions of what you think you should get. And so it helps if you do everything very methodical and are very careful with the way you do your questions and look at results. Now we're going to look at two types of research that are used, and they're basic and applied and action research. Basic research is testing and developing theories. So an example of this would be to cure cancer. And to do that, you have to study cancer cells. So basic research is for higher levels of research, and we will definitely not be doing anything close to basic research in this class. The type of research that we will be doing in this class is going to be applied research. And this is what most businesses use, and it's where you need to find immediate results to affect your bottom line. Also, action research, we do this every day. When it's cold outside, you have to decide what you're going to wear to keep you warm. So first you may research to see the temperature, and then you're going to solve an immediate and practical problem. Should I wear a hat, a scarf, a jacket? What should I wear to keep me warm? Why do research? Research aids in identifying new or additional information about a question or a topic of concern in a field. So that's why we do a literature review for part of our research. It's because we want to see what's been done on our topic and how will our study add to the field on this specific topic. And within our field of retailing, some different areas of research would be apparel production, clothing economics. You can also look at consumer behavior. You can look at fashion merchandising. You can look at marketing. You can look at retailing. And you can also look at the psychology and sociology of clothing. And research helps retailers to learn about consumer behavior to better satisfy their customers' needs and wants. It also helps understand economical and societal effects on fashion, design, and retailing. We also use research to determine why something happened. For example, when I worked at JCPenney in product development, our buyers noticed that we had a certain St. John's Bay shirt that was long sleeves, and we kept selling it in the summertime in El Paso. So we did some research, and we determined that we had a lot of workers coming over that worked out in the fields in agriculture, and they wanted long sleeves even in the summertime to keep themselves cool from the heat and to keep them from getting sunburned. So that's just an example of how that helped us, research helped us determine why that was happening and to learn more about our customer. And another example of how you can use research to better meet customers' needs and wants is if you want to develop a new you need to determine who your customer is. So say you want to come up with a new product, you have to have a consumer in mind before you come up with your product. So next we're going to look at who conducts research. As you know, in academics, professors and grad students and even undergraduate students perform research. However, academic research is very different from other forms of research within the industry. Next, there's extension personnel, and extension personnel work with the land-grant school, and for Texas, that would be A&M University, and the government pays extension people to do research. So they get a lot of extra funding that other universities don't get. And also there's USDA research and that research that is then given to the public to educate them. Also there's government research such as the census that's done, and then you can use that census data. Also, businesses do research all the time, kind of like I've mentioned about JCPenney doing research. An example also of a business doing research is really simple one would be whenever you go and you order something online, and you know how sometimes at the end after you've ordered, it'll ask you to fill out a little survey about your experience. They're collecting research to learn more about their customers' online experience. Also, in business and industry, here's a list of some different business organizations that collect data for the retail industry. And also, these are some different forms of organizations that you can actually look at and analyze their data, so it's available to the public. In the National Retail Federation, they research stores, products, consumers, retail locations, and other topics that are relative to retail. So, for example, they have a study about millennials and that the economy does not affect their spending habits. So, with the downturn of the economy, they said that millennials or Generation Y consumers, it didn't affect their purchasing behavior. They still purchased as much as they always have. When is research conducted? Research is conducted when someone has a question or wants to solve a problem. For example, if you're wanting to solve a problem, a great one that would be great research would be able to cure cancer. But if you wanted to solve a problem, an example would be if you're looking as a retailer, you could say, why is something not selling in my store? Is it that we're targeting to the wrong person? Do I have the wrong item? Did the climate change when it shouldn't have? Is that affecting it? So you're trying to find out what's causing the problem. It could even be as simple as you can see sometimes that say like Walmart or a big box retailer will bring in a ton of shirts, say in red and black to College Station. Well, red and black t-shirts are not going to sell well in College Station like they're going to sell in Lubbock. So it even can do with the type of consumers that you have in the market, such as a certain college. So other things that you need to look at when research is conducted is how can customers be better served? So that can be with the customer service they're receiving in store from your employees, online. It can be anything to do with the merchandising of the store, the setup, the layout of the store, how things are merchandised within the store. Where should a company open up new stores? That's a big form of research, because many companies spend a lot of money and a lot of time figuring out where their next store needs to be. And an example of that is a lot of times when you're checking out at a retailer, they'll ask for your zip code before they'll check you out. They're asking for their zip code because they want to see if people are coming from a different zip code to that store to shop. And if whatever the largest amount of zip codes that they get, then they'll say, oh, if we don't have a store within the zip code, we need to add a store there because that's where a lot of our customers are coming and they're looking for our store. Other forms of research that can be conducted are how long should a fashion be on display? When should it be advertised? That's a big one on when it should be advertised. I know when we worked at Penny's with the buyer that they would wait and advertise when everything was priced at a certain price because they were going to try to get the highest markup that they could out of the item at certain price points. So they would only have ads for the items when they're at certain price points. Also, a big thing to remember about research is if you've taken category management and you've talked about gaining insights into customers in retail, that's pretty much what research is. All you're doing is you're trying to gain insights to your customers. So most research within the retail industry is you're just wanting to learn more about your customer and what they want and where they are, what products they want, how do they want their store set up, what image do they want that store to project. Those are all different things that they're actually looking for within them. To identify if your research project is valuable, you need to determine if it is worth the time, money, and people that are necessary to conduct the research, and can it be done in a cost-effective manner. Sometimes some studies will tend to be too expensive or they're going to take too long. So, for example, if you were doing a study for a specific retailer, they're going to need that study quickly. So you can't do as in-depth of research as you might have wanted because it may take too long to get the results back. Or you can't have as large of amount of subjects because you couldn't get all that information back in time, or just kind of like y'all's studies. They're going to be small studies because you don't have any money to fund your study to give incentives to get people to fill out your survey. Also, to identify if a research project is valuable, the following questions should be asked. You need to ask does your topic need to be something that has not been exhausted? So if you're a grad student, and you're going to work on your thesis or your dissertation, you definitely have to use a topic that's not been exhausted. So there has to be something new that you can come up with, or something different that you can do with the theory that you choose. You also need to have a clearly stated what your topic is and understand what questions you want to ask and find answers to for your question. Also, a lot of times research is great if it has a concern for the industry. It needs to answer a question. Also, a lot of studies within academia come up with new models or theories. That's not the type of research you would do in the business world, but that is definitely, academic research is all about new models, new theories, or adding on to a theory. Within the industry, though, you would look for new reasons for customer behavior and how are those affecting the industry. And another one would be bringing new applications to retailing. Examples of new applications would be such as using your cell phone as a POS system. Another app, like, these are more innovations that are technology wise, but also even just social media or virtual media and how that's affecting consumers and their purchase intentions. Next, we're going to look at the purpose of research. And your topic does not need to be something that actually adds to a theory or is that in depth as what a professor or a grad student is. You just want to answer a question. And it needs to be something that's going to be worth your time and your effort. It needs to be cost effective. And your question needs to have a valid purpose. But it doesn't necessarily have to discover new information like a professor would. However, you can look at a model or a theory and try to use that within your research, because researchers, that's a big part of what they do, is try to develop new models and theories. They want to establish new facts. They want to expand existing knowledge on a topic or a theory or a model. They also want to improve a new application. So an example of improving an application would be improving the U.S. domestic apparel sizing chart. One of your examples in your book talks about how the sizing chart in the U.S., there is no standard sizing, and if there was, how that would help keep each retailer within the same sizing standards. Research also answers a question or solves a problem. When researchers in academia do research, they have to use a model with a theoretical framework behind it to base their study upon. It would be nice within your project if you could find a theory to base your research on, but that's not the most important thing for your study. Your study is more about learning the research process. So, what is research? Research involves conducting a study, collecting data, recording and interpreting results, and preparing a written document. So these are all things that you'll be doing throughout this semester. And the key components of research are asking questions, surveying the literature, conducting the study, collection of data, interpreting results, adding something new to the field of study, and preparing a written document. And that's also all the key components that you'll be doing. So all research starts out with the purpose of the study. And the purpose of the study is really asking the question about what I want to know or what I want to learn from this study. Then you're going to identify the problem or your hypothesis or research question. So what is the problem that you want to solve is what you're going to find out after that. Next, you want to survey what else has been written about your topic, and you're going to do your literature review for this. And this is where you go and you're going to just see what else has been, what other research has been done on this topic. What have other people found about your topic? What theories have they used? What models have they used? And what subjects have they used? What products or what behaviors have they studied? And you're just going to find out what else has been done. Then you need to explain your methods used in conducting your study. So this is where you're going to go in depth about this is how I collected my data. This is what I did to do my study. This is how many participants I had. This is how I found them. And this is what I asked them. This is how many questions I asked them. These are the different things of questions that I asked to find out my research question or hypothesis. And then next, you're going to give the results. So next you want to tell us, so I asked all these questions. Here's what I found. This is what I learned from my subjects. And then you want to interpret what you found with your conclusion. So interpretation is where you're going to say, okay, here's my results. So how does this relate to the retail industry? Or how does this relate to my consumer? Or how does this relate to the literature? Like, did I find something different from what other people had found? Did I find the same thing? Were my hypothesis rejected? So I know maybe the theory that I used doesn't work for this type of subject or this type of product that we studied. And then last, you would have come back with your implications and recommendations. And that's where you add something new to your field of study and saying, here's what I found, this is how you can apply it. Recommendations is just talking about how things you would change about your study. Things that you might change, like maybe you needed more subjects, or maybe you shouldn't have added this one type of question because it wasn't valid. Those would be just different things. And then last, after you've collected all of this, then you write your written document, which is your research paper. So there are different ways that you can format your research. And the format of the presentation depends on your audience and if it's a business or academic research. So if it's academic research, they want to know how you collected your data, and it focuses more on a theory and a model. While if you're looking at business research, you just want, or definitely if you're dealing, depends on your audience deals, if you're dealing with like the press, then they want the big highlights. Or if you're dealing with shareholders, the big thing they want to know is annual reports that give the facts and the figures and all the numbers to things. So say like an annual report is usually 30 to 40 pages, while say a dissertation is usually 100 or more pages, because you have to go in extreme depth of how you collected your data, all of the methods behind it, all of the results. Even if they're not significant, you still want to talk about them and have them in there if you're doing an actual dissertation. Okay, what we're fixing to talk about makes really great test questions, so make sure you pay attention to the slide. Now we're going to look at ways of conducting research, and here's two different ways of conducting research. One is inductive, which is using a specific case or circumstance to generalize to the larger association or population. An example of this is if you were observing students and you saw that a Texas Tech student wore boots to the football game, then your conclusion would be, therefore, all students at Texas Tech wear boots to the football game. So you're generalizing from one case to a larger population. while deductive is proceeding from general to specific. So an example of this would be all students like to use Kindles over buying an actual book for class. So Sarah, who is a student, would rather have a Kindle than a book for all her classes. So there we went from the larger population to a single case. So where do you start your research? You start by reviewing the literature on your topic and looking for key concepts, constructs, models, and theories. And knowing what research has been done and where that data has been found on your topic, you want to start to keep bibliographical information in which you use the exact APA style and systematic recording that is given. And you want to keep up with all the articles that you use. And you need to have them, and every sentence has to be sourced back to a reference if it's used directly from a article. So it's very important to keep up. I would save every single article that you use, and I would also print it, just so you can go through and highlight where you want to use stuff. Then also you can go through all of their references at the end if you want to find other articles about a certain area that they talked about. And you also, I would go ahead and write down the APA citation for each one. Whenever you go and look for articles, you can usually find the APA citation. If you get it from the library, you can find the APA citation with when you look kind of like at the abstract. A lot of times, if you look at the abstract for the article, it'll also give you the citation. Go ahead and print that, save it, so you'll have it. You can just copy and paste it into your paper. And then when you start writing your review of literature and you start having where you're going to cite different people within your paper, put in that citation right when you do it. It's a lot of extra work and time, but it's really hard after you've already written it to try to go back and find all of those citations and what they went to. So you need to do all that work up front. And you just want to try to keep systematic records. So if you have so many articles that go for one of your key terms, put them all together in a folder. If you have different articles that go for a different key term, put them in a different folder, just to help you kind of keep up with everything. Also, another thing to think about when you're doing your review of literature search is if you find a really great article that is pretty much doing kind of the same thing that you're wanting to do, look at their review of literature. Look at who they've cited. Look at their citations. There's a lot of information within their article that you can probably use. And then you can also find where everything came from off of their article by looking in their citations.
Now we're going to look at two ways of conducting research. You can either conduct qualitative research or quantitative research, or you can actually do qualitative and quantitative research within a study. So first, looking at qualitative research, it's more about words and you usually use case studies, interviews, observations, and focus groups with qualitative research. An example of this would be interviewing someone about their shopping experience and then use what they say as results. So you're not using numbers to give results, but you're giving what other people have said. So you would never say in your results, 5 people said this, or a percentage of people said this, like you would with quantitative. You would want to say something about the majority of people within this focus group said that their shopping experience was affected most by store environment. And then looking at quantitative research, this is where you use numbers to analyze data. So even gender is given a number. And you tend to use surveys or experimental designs to collect this type of data. So for example, you would look at how many students surveyed said that price was the most important thing to them when buying shoes. So you would say 80% of students said that price was the most important thing to them when buying shoes.
So when you're doing fashion design and retailing research, You need to look at the 5 P's of retailing because that's what most research that you will do will incorporate one of these. So, as you all know, the 5 P's are product, place, price, promotion, and personality. Product, this is where you want to look at the advantages and disadvantages of your product, performance characteristics. You want to look at the needs of your consumers. What type of product are they needing or wanting? Is your product correct for certain stores? Do certain consumers over other consumers like this product? It would also incorporate quality and brand loyalty for products. Next is place. This looks at the location of your store, and this looks at city's characteristics, neighborhood, your retail mix, the demographics. An example, this is on page 12 of your book. 12 of your book for Levi Strauss talks about the research that they do to find their location for a new store and what characteristics they look for in consumers. Next is price. So price will look at your cost of goods, your gross margin, your expenses, your profit, and your loss. Within the industry, this is something buyers, they're doing research all the time about price. What price should they set their product at? They would do, like, if a buyer is going to bring a product that they sold the previous year, they're going to go back to the sales from the previous year for that product and look at what price did the product sell the best at and determine where they should set their price for this product for the next year. And last is promotion. And this is looking at all your marketing. So what types of media do you use? How is the product promoted? And are you using print, television, internet? This is a big thing that you see in retailing right now is internet versus store. Which works better? Which do you sell more from? Or another thing you would look at is what magazine do I want to be in to sell my product? What magazines do my consumers look at? And next is personality. It's the image that a retailer portrays. And this has to do with the design of the store, the design of their logo, their layout, all of their visuals that reach their target customer. An example of a company recently that tried to change their image is JCPenney. And we know that that did not go so well. But it's still a good example of a company totally trying to reinvent themselves and come up with a different image. They changed their logo, they set up their stores, the types of advertising they did were totally different, just to try to change things up. Now we're going to look at some theoretical definitions. These will also probably be some more test questions. So you want to make sure that when we go through the next few slides, that you write something down about these or make a note about them. So first we're going to look at concept. And concept is an abstraction from observed events. It is a visual fact. It is not static, but it changes. So, and it's generalized from observation. So it's visual. An example of this is when we think of jeans today, we think, especially for girls, we think of skinny jeans, not loose jeans that were worn in the 1990s. But we all know that jeans are long pants that are worn, but what they look like has changed over time. So it's a visual observation and a visual fact. So it's something you can actually see, but it has changed over time. Next is a construct, and it is an abstraction that is not easily observed, such as attitudes, which are difficult to verbalize and are not physical objects that you can see. Also, if you look at someone's morals, values, their thoughts, and motivations, those are all things that you cannot see. They're more internal than external. Also, being internally motivated would be another example. And constructs and concepts are used when communicating about fashion. and it's important that everyone has the same meaning of the concept and the construct. So whenever you're talking about concepts and constructs within your research, you have to define exactly what they mean. So that's why in the next few chapters we'll talk about having definitions for your key terms, just so whenever you're talking about a certain thing, everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. So an example would be, say in your research you're going to talk about dress. So dress can be either a garment that a woman wears, or dress can be what you wear is what dress can be. So there's two different terms. Either one's gender specific and the other is what you are wearing. So that's why you're going to have to define certain terms so everyone will know exactly what you're talking about. Next is model. And a model is a visual representation of concepts and constructs, and it helps categorize ideas, and others can use it and apply it to their problems. A model helps explain or represent theories developed, and it's usually a series of boxes or arrows, and it pulls ideas together and is good for visual learners. It can also be kind of like a diagram. And we'll look at some models in the next few chapters. Next is a theory, and it's the scientific explanation of events and answers the question why. For a statement to be a theory, it must be tested many times with the same results produced over and over again. So an example would be if you're making C's on all of your exams and you keep getting the same grade over and over again, then you're going to make a C in the class. And a theory helps guide the direction of research from one step to the next. An example of a theory that we'll talk about in this class will be the theory of planned behavior. Now we're going to look at 4 models of scientific development in clothing and textiles. So the first one is the cumulative theory. And this is when new knowledge is added to old knowledge, and each step builds to a more complex step. So an example would be within textiles would be fabric starts as a fiber, then a fiber is spun into a yarn, and then a yarn is made into fabric. So we're just adding, each step builds to a more complex relationship. And then looking at another example would be until the 1970s, whenever the economy was doing well, within fashion, skirts became shorter. And then when the economy wasn't doing well, then skirts would get longer. An evolutionary theory is when new theories replace old theories or new evidence proves old evidence wrong. An example of this within the fashion industry is triphosphate used to be used to make fabric flame retardant until it was found to be a carcinogen, which is a substance that can cause cancer, and it was banned in 1973. And now new chemicals are used. Another example kind of evolutionary theory is one would be kind of in the way that we market today. So everything is not marketed through print nowadays. Now we have a lot of internet marketing or social marketing through our phones. That would be an evolutionary theory, a theory that looks at the change in the way that we market to consumers. Next, you have a revolutionary theory, and this is when theories, facts, or methods and goals are replaced by something totally new, or you have a paradigm shift. So used to, everything was done through mass production. So a company would order something and they would order everything the same. And now with technology, we can have mass customization, where a customer can have the garment made specifically for them. They can pick the color, the design, the sizing for it, and have the sizing fit them exactly. And the fourth theory is the gradualist theory, and it's the result of slow changes that are incorporated due to problem solving. An example of this is the changing of the domestic apparel sizing guideline for older women because they're living longer, and because they're living longer, they become bigger or they gain more weight towards the end of their life. So they're wearing larger sizes than what they used to wear in the past for older women because they're actually living longer. The gradualist theory also looks at sustainability and looking at how we reuse consumer products. And our last slide looks at the models used in research. First is the Venn diagram, and it's usually multiple circles where they all come together to form a mathematical set of a theory that shows overlapping commonalities. And then the non-directional cycle looks at how fashion is influenced by political, economic, and social factors. So an example to go along with the Venn diagram is the economic rise of the upper class has caused a rise in the luxury market for fashion goods. And then another example would be the economic downturn has caused everyone to expect to get a deal or a coupon with a purchase in the mass market. And this concludes lecture 1.